In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I was able to get my virtual law firm up and running for just under $2,000. That's insanely cheap. What's even more crazy is that it only costs on average up to $125 per month in order for me to keep the virtual law firm up and running. That's insane. So if this interests you, if you're interested in starting your own law firm, or maybe you're interested in transitioning to a virtual law firm, well, I recommend you keep watching. Welcome to Law Venture, a channel devoted to lawyers and future lawyers. My name is Jarrett Stone. I'm the owner of Stone Firm PLC, but more importantly, my law firm has been virtual for some time now. I think that's very important to mention for a number of reasons. By having my own virtual law firm, I've had firsthand experience with what works and what doesn't work when it comes to the very first stage of signing up a client to the very last stage of resolving a case and everything in between. And I can wholeheartedly, 100% guarantee you that a virtual law firm works. I have to admit, I'm extremely excited to talk about virtual law firms because it's always been a goal of Law Venture to share the business side of having your own law firm. That way you can see the best way in order to control your legal career. And the best way to control your legal career is to be your own boss, to have your own law firm. But just because you're practicing, quote, small law, that doesn't mean you can't have big success. And in order to have big success with a small law firm, it's all about profiting as soon as possible. Not 2 years from now, not a year from now. We're talking about profiting within the first month or 2 months. And in order to do that, the best way to do that is to make sure your expenses are as small as possible. You're operating on that shoestring budget. You're balling on a budget. And the goal here is that as soon as you start profiting, you can take those profits and reinvest them into your law firm so your law firm starts growing exponentially. And one of the beauties of virtual law firms is that they operate on this shoestring budget. And this is just one of the reasons why virtual law firms, in my opinion, are the future of our legal profession. In fact, if you haven't seen it already, sliding above, I believe right over here, is 7 reasons why you need to start a virtual law firm. And I recommend you watch that before you start watching the remaining portion of this video, because that's just going to get you sold on the idea. At least that's the goal of that video. And once you're sold on the idea, then I recommend you watching the remaining portion, because in the remaining portion of this video, we're gonna cover everything you need in order to have your systems in place in order for you to run your virtual law firm and to keep it running. So with all that said, let's cover how I was able to get my virtual law firm up and running for just under $2,000. But I do want to stress that this isn't some bright line rule to where everyone watching this video will be able to get their law firm started for the same exact price. And the reason for that is, in your situation, you may have to spend a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but at the end of the day, the principle I think is going to be the same for everyone, which is that starting a virtual law firm in today's world is a whole lot easier and a whole lot cheaper than you may be thinking. So let's get this party started by talking about the negative. What I did not need to buy because I already possessed it. For example, it should not be of any surprise that you need to have a computer for your virtual law firm to work. Not only as a lawyer do you need to have a computer to draft things, to write things, to email, but you should probably have a laptop if you want to be completely virtual, because the whole point of virtual is being able to work anywhere and everywhere that you want to work, assuming you have internet there. That's my little asterisk. But if you want to travel to a different city and work in a different city, if you want to travel to a different location, maybe down the street at a Starbucks or something, and be able to work from there, then a laptop is going to give you that sort of mobility and that sort of freedom. So I personally would recommend that you get a laptop. And in my situation, I already had a laptop. I was already making Law Venture videos on my laptop. So I didn't need to purchase a laptop in order to have my law firm. So that's an expense that I didn't count towards that just under $2,000 startup costs. And for those that are wondering, okay, Jarrett, do you have a Mac? Do you have a PC? How does that work? Is there any compatibility issues? Well, I can tell you, I have a Mac, I use a Mac, and I honestly have solely used a Mac for the last 15 years. Not this laptop exclusively, but I think in the last 15 to 17 years, I've used maybe, or I've had I think 2 Macs during that time. They've lasted a very long time. This one is only 4 to 5 years old, so that goes to tell you how long the other one lasted. And my big recommendation for those that are shopping for a laptop in order to have their virtual law firm, I highly recommend, whether it's a Mac or a PC, to make sure you maximize the RAM you can get. Keep in mind, I'm talking about RAM. This is memory, not storage. The more RAM you can get now, the longer your laptop is going to be able to handle the increase in technology. Because as programs become more advanced, as programs become heavier and harder on your system, you need to have the RAM that is able to grow and kind of weather the storm as programs are advancing. So if you don't want to have to buy a laptop every few years, maximize that RAM. Now, I don't want this to turn into a feud between PC and Mac. I'm just frankly not going to talk about PC because I haven't had a PC in a very long time. But with Mac, I do want to point out that I don't have any types of compatibility concerns, and I haven't had any type of compatibility issues. I know maybe 10 years ago, there was always the concern of, okay, if I get a Mac, what am I going to be able to use and what am I not going to be able to use? In today's world, Mac basically has everything that I would expect PC to have. And when it comes to my specific situation with my law firm, I would say 95% of the programs that I run are going to be Microsoft Word for obvious reasons, and then Excel, because when it comes to my case management, I do it all through Excel. When it comes to specific client info, notes, hours, rates, closing and accounting documents, all that is done through Excel. I spent a good amount of time having like a template Excel with multiple sheets to where it can be copied and pasted for every single client, and then it kind of fills out its own information. As, let's say, I put a medical bill here on sheet number 1, the medical bill knows through Excel to go to a different sheet and to calculate different things. And that is pretty nerdy, and if you have any questions about that, we can get more into the weeds about that. But the whole point here is that when it comes to programs, I'm primarily using Word and Excel. No issues using a Mac. And if you don't have Word or Excel on your Mac, then I'm pretty sure you're going to be okay using Mac's Pages and Numbers programs, which essentially is the same thing. Yeah, talking about Word, Pages, Numbers, Excel, and all of that isn't the sexiest thing to talk about, but I felt like it was necessary to cover. Let's just move on. So one thing I already possessed before starting my law firm is an external hard drive, aka peace of mind, because I do keep my client files on my laptop so I can stay portable. I don't have to, track down the external hard drive every time I want to work on a case outside of my office space. But God forbid, if something were to happen to my baby right here, my laptop, and something were to happen to those client files, it would feel amazing knowing that I have it all backed up right here. Then it's just a matter of making sure that I take the time to back up the client files. Now, in my hand, and you can see how tiny it is 2 terabytes of storage. That is so much for this size, and it's so much for basically the relatively cheap price that you'll end up paying for an external hard drive. The prices are getting lower and lower by the years, and I mean, honestly, it's a little bit of a race to the bottom. And when it comes to 2 terabytes, it's probably overkill. I'll be honest, if I were to, die and come back a lawyer 4 different times during all of these legal careers, I probably wouldn't fill up 2 terabytes, because the only way you're gonna fill up 2 terabytes is if you have a ton of video files that you're constantly uploading, or if you're the IRS with a ton of documents that are coming in. But in either event, this is something you need to have if you don't already have it. And I'll be sure to link to you any recommendations that I have for external hard drives down below in the description. And on that note, I'll actually link to you any of the recommendations that I have for all these startup costs and all these, items that you need to get in order to have a virtual law firm. But I do want to stress that the reason why I'm linking these items isn't simply to link them. It's because I truly believe in them and I recommend them. Another thing that I had before starting my law firm, a cell phone. And that's something that I think all lawyers have these days. And so it's something that you probably aren't going to be factoring into your virtual law firm. Keeping in mind, I'm the type of person who doesn't buy the latest and greatest cell phone that comes out every year. Pretty sure my cell phone is 3 years old, which I think by some standards is out of date. But this phone gets the job done, and this phone is the hub to my virtual law firm communications. I also used the free headphones that came with the phone in order to have better audio quality and to also be hands-free. That way I can type notes while I'm talking. But whenever you have your phone be the central hub of everything, especially when it comes to communications, the downside there, at least for me, is that I've realized my phone battery doesn't last nearly as long because I tend to be on it a whole lot more than what I usually was on it before being 100% virtual. And the issue there is because these have to be plugged in here, I can't charge it at the same time. So I'll confess, I'm considering upgrading to AirPods to where I just had those bad boys in my ears while my phone's charging during the day, and then I can just multitask that way. But again, I still like being that person who's balling on a budget, that shoestring budget, but the AirPods are pretty appealing, I have to confess. Okay, so that's the foundation that I had before everything started. Let's start talking about the expenses I accrued in order to get the virtual law firm up and running. The first expense was simply setting up Stone Firm PLC as an entity in the state of Texas. That ended up costing me $312. And essentially that just required me to go to the Texas Secretary of State to fill out the forms, the paperwork, in order to register my law firm as an existing entity in the state of Texas. And obviously this expense is going to be specific to your situation and which state you're in. This second expense, in my mind, is an absolute necessity. And that is you need to have a website up and running, because in today's world, it's all about having an online presence. And what better way to do that than having your own website? Now this right here may be the biggest difference on how I started my virtual law firm and how you may end up starting your virtual law firm. And it may be the biggest difference when it comes to the prices. You see, I'm an absolute nerd and I'm a bit of a control freak. The last thing I wanted to do was to pay someone to basically build my law firm website and to have control of that, and for me to be at their mercy because I was just ignorant on how the website worked. I didn't like being at the mercy of somebody to where they could charge whatever, and I also didn't like them being the bottleneck to where if I needed to make a change to the website, I would have to go through them first, and that would just slow down the process, because when I want to do something, I want to do it right then and there, and I don't want to have to wait and for there to be a delay. And so all that to say, I ended up teaching myself how to build my own website, and it's a whole lot easier than you may be thinking. If you're interested in learning on how to do that, not only because you're a nerd and a control freak, but maybe to also to keep your startup expenses and your month-to-month expenses as low as possible, then be sure to let me know that you're interested in related videos, and just let me know in the comment section. Typically, whenever I see comments saying, hey, I want to see videos like this, that makes me, think that, okay, this video is important, so I'll bump it up to the priority list and I'll be sure to knock out that video. The issue is if nobody's saying they want the video, then I probably won't make the video, because if nobody wants it, then why make the video? So you just gotta let me know and do that in the comments down below. So with my situation, to get my law firm website up and running, there were essentially 4 steps. And the first one was purchasing the domain name. So to do that, I ended up going to GoDaddy.com and I just typed in a whole bunch of different domains that applied to my law firm. And unfortunately, a lot of them were taken, but the one I ended up really liking and settling on is stonefirm.law. So that domain right there cost me $70 for the entire year. But the plot thickened a little bit about 2 or 3 months after I started my law firm and everything was up and running, because I received an email from GoDaddy saying that stonefirm.com was set to expire in a certain amount of days. I saw that and I had to admit I was pretty intrigued, because I already owned stonefirm.law. Why not own stonefirm.com? My thought process there was, some people, whenever they're typing in a website, they may overlook that it's a .law, so why not have the .com and then just reroute it to the .law to where it all goes to the same place. And if it was available for auction, I was just curious on what the price would end up being, and so I waited for the auction to start. Now, I have no idea why the original owner of stonefirm.com let their domain lapse. Maybe they retired, or maybe they thought the website wasn't beneficial, or maybe they changed their credit card, or their credit card expired and as a result it didn't renew, and then as a result it went up to auction. Either way, when the auction started, I was definitely lurking and seeing the price go up. And that put in perspective that potentially the original owner was trying to purchase back their own website domain, but with about 5 seconds left, I came in and purchased stonefirm.com at the amount of $171. And oddly enough, it only cost me an extra 17 bucks to have the .com for an entire year, which, by the way, both domains are set to renew, not to expire, and I'm gonna keep my eye on them. But when it comes to just overall startup costs, technically the .com one that I purchased 2 to 3 months later wasn't a startup cost, but it's something I wanted to factor in here because you may want to consider, if both the .com and the .law are available, getting both. Or if you just want to get the .com, if that's available, then go for it. But it doesn't hurt to have both, to where you have just more online real estate. And after I purchased the domain name, or names if we keep it plural and count the .com, the next step is to purchase your online hosting. And hosting is essentially the land that you're going to build your website on. So I ended up going with GoDaddy for my hosting. They make it so much easier because they essentially upsell you once you purchase the domain from GoDaddy. They say, hey, while you're here, go ahead and get hosting. And it's like, I mean, it's just right there, so let's go with it. And so what I did was I purchased the business package for $360 for the year. And 2 things on that. One, if you just have a law firm website that you're not expecting to have a ton of traffic with, then you probably don't need the business package, and you can probably get hosting for a whole lot cheaper with a different package offered by GoDaddy. And 2, I can't tell you whether or not GoDaddy is going to give you the best bang for your buck. I've seen other reviews from other people in different industries complaining about GoDaddy being maybe overpriced, maybe not being as fast when it comes to hosting. And so whether or not that's accurate, I can't tell you one way or the other. So I do recommend in this situation, maybe do a little bit of extra research to see if you can get cheaper hosting, especially if you're not gonna have a super intense website to where a ton of traffic is coming in and you're not having to worry about the website being slowed down by all this traffic. Just something to keep in mind, and it's something I want to give you a little bit of a disclaimer on. Okay, so you need to grit your teeth here because what I'm about to say may sound like a different language and it may be super boring, but it's extremely important. And I'm going to oversimplify this incredibly, but I hope the message comes across very clearly, which is that the next step in this process is you need to purchase an SSL. And in my situation, it costs $56 per year. But right now, you're not thinking about the 56, you're thinking, what in the world is an SSL? So boiled down, the most simplified way to explain it is if you look up, you'll see that it's HTTPS : and the rest of the website. If you're on YouTube, it has the rest of the YouTube URL. Now, with this S, it essentially tells the browser that this is a secure and safe website. And so it essentially allows a secure connection between the viewer, the traffic that's coming in, and the website. And that's extremely important because very recently, browsers, and a lot of browsers are making this transition, Google itself is making this transition, will not open sites that are only HTTP : and whatever the URL is. And in order to have that S on there, to have that security, you have to have an SSL certificate. And in my situation, like I said, that only costs $56 per year, which seems like an unnecessary expense, but it's incredibly necessary. In fact, I would say it's a prerequisite to having a website. So for me, the final step in this website equation was purchasing a website builder. And this cost me $228 for the year. And the builder that I ended up going with, and I have no regrets about it. In fact, I fully and wholeheartedly recommend this builder. It's Thrive Themes. Now, I can probably spend the next 20 minutes talking about Thrive Themes and what all I learned and what all goes into building a website using Thrive Themes and what all Thrive Themes offers, but I'm gonna go ahead and put that to the back burner for another video. If you're interested in learning the actual technical aspects of building your website and doing it in a super easy way with Thrive Themes, be sure to let me know in the comments. I may even go through an entire tutorial video to where I build a legal website in front of your very eyes as you watch the YouTube video, and that way you can follow along step by step. Again, if you're interested, let me know in the comments down below. Okay, so to sum up, by having the domain name, by having hosting, by having the SSL, and by having a website builder, those are all the tools needed for you to be able to get your website up and running. So now let's transition a little bit to something a bit more concrete, and that's your virtual law firm's address. So the last thing I wanted to do with my virtual law firm was to use my personal home address. That seemed like a terrible idea. So what I ended up doing was getting a permanent mailbox with UPS, and that allows me to use the UPS address, which is sweet whatever, and I simply have a dash, my mailbox number, and all the mail that goes to my law firm, I'll say, but ends up going to UPS, is directed straight to my mailbox because UPS sees the dash, my mailbox number, and everything is taken care of. It allows me to separate business from personal. I don't have to worry about people showing up to my house, and it still appears very professional on the letterheads and the signature blocks for my letters and my filings. But let's be clear, I'm 100% upfront with my clients that I have a virtual law firm, and if they go to that address, they're simply going to go to a permanent mailbox. So it's all about 100% transparency. That way your clients don't feel like they're being tricked or duped. Did I just say duped? Anyways, the permanent mailbox in my situation ended up costing $315 for the year. And the reason why I think this is kind of on the high end is because they didn't have a lot of availabilities, especially at this location, which is a prime location. I know another lawyer with a virtual law firm who was able to get a bigger size permanent mailbox. I ended up getting a small version at a cheaper price than I ended up paying for the small version. So it's going to depend on your situation. It's going to depend on your area. But for me, $315 for the year. The next thing to talk about is your business email. And for me, I went through Google because Google is just the king of email and it's the king of search engines. So it seemed like the obvious choice. And in my situation, that costs about $13 per month. So similar to the address situation, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't relying on my personal cell phone and that I had a business phone number to use. But I wanted to make sure that the business phone number still went to the same exact cell phone. I don't want to have to purchase two cell phones. Not only does that seem like a pain, but it just seems unnecessary. So the decision I ended up reaching was using Unitel Voice. So based on my research, Unitel Voice was the best bang for my buck because it allowed me to get an office phone number, it allows me to have 3 separate lines, and it also allows me to send faxes.
Thank you for calling Stone Firm PLLC, a law firm devoted to serving Texans. If you are a current client or a previous client, press 1. If you are seeking representation or wondering whether this law firm can help you, press 2. For all other callers, press 3. Please stay on the line to hear these options again.
By the way, that was my lovely wife who recorded that, and if you're watching, I'm very appreciative. So whenever people call, they have 3 options, and those 3 options will all take them down 3 separate lines, but those 3 separate lines converge into 1 cell phone, and that means I don't have to purchase an office phone. Instead, I use the current phone that I already have, and it works and it seems ultra professional, especially at only $15 a month. That's a great deal, especially whenever you factor in that you can send faxes with it. The only downside with the fax situation is that it's limited to 10 megabytes, which is a relatively small fax size to where you can potentially have to end up having to send multiple faxes if you're having to send a ton of medical records, for example. So let's start talking about banks because I have to say, I think I lucked out. I have 0 complaints about the bank that I ended up choosing, and I've talked to other lawyers about the banks they've used, and they all have some complaints to some degrees. But the bank I ended up choosing is Chase. And with Chase, I have a business checking, I have a business savings, and I have an IOLTA account. And the most important aspect, especially from the perspective of starting your law firm, is that I pay $0 in order to keep it up and running. And the reason why that's the case is because I have a minimum of $1,500 in the checking account. And the reason why I don't pay anything for the savings account is because I have the savings linked to the checking. I recommend going to the Chase website to see what all you have to do in order to make sure that you're not having to pay anything monthly or annually in order to keep the accounts up and running. But in my situations, based on the current criteria, it's $1,500 in the checking in order to pay $0 a month. And it's a matter of linking your savings to the checking in order to pay $0 a month for that. IOLTA, you don't have to pay anything for that. Now, there are 2 reasons why I say I lucked out with Chase. The first is whenever I did sign up with Chase, I didn't realize what Zelle was. And I know a lot of banks use Zelle, but at the same time, a lot of banks don't use Zelle. With Zelle, that gives me the ability to send and receive money instantly, and it's super easy. More specifically, I send and receive money to other law firms for cases, involving referrals or cases that I'm helping on. And I also send money to providers on cases where they treated my clients. And it's all instant. And again, it's super easy. The second aspect, and I don't know if this is supposed to happen. I don't know if it's an accident. I really don't want to question it whatsoever. Whenever I wire money out of the IOLTA account to clients, Chase doesn't charge me for those wires. And so it allows me to send money to clients electronically. I don't want to say instantly because it typically takes 24 to 48 hours for the wire to go through, but at no cost and at the convenience of the client. It is absolutely fantastic, especially if you're trying to be a virtual law firm that's sending and receiving money. By being able to do that all electronically and at no cost, that is incredible. Along those lines, I also have a business credit card with Chase because after a ton of research, I made the determination that the best business credit card for me is the Business Preferred Ink card because its benefits are directly aligned with how I spend my money for my law firm. And it allows me to get a whole bunch of travel points, and it also allows me to get triple points for every dollar spent on social media ads, Facebook ads. I don't really run Google ads, but if I needed to do that, I'd get triple points on that as well. So all those benefits outweighed any other credit cards available, and that came in at $95 per year. So to round out this category, I ended up getting 2 sets of checks, one set for the business checking, the other for the IOLTA, and each set ended up costing $75, which totals to $150. Now, when it comes to office supplies, there were 2 primary things that I needed and ended up purchasing. The first one is a printer/scanner. So I ended up going with the Brother brand in order to get my printer and scanner. And I went with Brother because I've had good experiences with that brand, at least relatively speaking to other brands. And I went with the cheapest option because I rarely print things. I was primarily needing a scanner, and I don't scan a ton of things because I try and make sure that if I receive any documents, I'm hoping it's by fax and I'm hoping it's by email, and that just basically makes the scanner obsolete. But there are still situations where I still need the scanner, and so that was kind of the primary focus, but it didn't really make much sense to spend more than the $80 that I did spend to get something that was like this robust printing system that I will rarely end up using. I also ended up getting a PDF software called PDF Expert, and that was a one-time payment of $80. And I've noticed that a lot of PDF softwares out there are now changing to be subscription-based, and in the long run, that seems completely overpriced. That's why I went with PDF Expert. It was a one-time payment, and it does everything I need it to do. It signs things, it redacts things, and it does bait stamps. Unfortunately, the built-in preview, which is the PDF reader for Mac, doesn't do a good job actually redacting. You can put a black box over a PDF document, over some text like a social security number, and then you can save it as a new PDF. But what I realized is that you can take your cursor and then highlight that text even though you can't see it, but you can copy that text and then paste it onto a Word document, and you see exactly what was intended to be redacted but truly wasn't. That's why I ended up deciding, okay, I need to pay for a PDF software. That way everything is kosher and I don't have to worry about, things being redacted but not really redacted. A service that I've been using recently is Pandadoc, which has allowed me to send clients documents for them to sign electronically and return to me. And the benefit here is it doesn't require my clients to print and then go find a scanner if they don't have a scanner. And those kinds of delays or those kinds of resistance points may turn the client away from potentially being a client, or may slow things down when it comes to a settlement. And so I'm all about speed and efficiency. And so if I can send something electronically that people can sign on their phone or on their laptop, and then I can receive it in a moment's notice, I'm all about that. But to make it even better, Pandadoc is free so long as you're just sending and receiving documents that need to be signed. So it's been absolutely perfect thus far. Now let's wrap things up by talking about an optional expense that you can accrue either as a startup cost, never, or just down the road. And that's becoming an online notary. Now, full disclosure, I became a traditional notary, so to speak, a couple years ago, and I can't remember how much that cost, but it couldn't have been too much. And I became 2 or 3 days ago an online notary, and that cost me about 50 bucks. So it technically wasn't a startup cost, and that's why I'm not counting it into the equation here, but something to consider. The reason why I became an online notary is solely to make things more convenient for my client, which you can tell is a theme during this entire video. Because in the personal injury world, whenever I settle a case, the insurance company, they'll send me a release. That release I'll send to the client that needs to be signed and notarized more often than not. And then what ends up happening sometimes is the client can't find a notary, the schedule doesn't work out, or maybe they try and go to the bank, but the bank's closed. Whatever it is, it's my job to make the client's life easier, and it's a whole lot easier if they just hop on a Zoom call. I do everything in compliance with Texas law, and they return the document back to me via Pandadoc, and then I send the notarized document over to the insurance company, and then they tender the money, and it's all super effective, and it's really, really quick, and most importantly, it's to the benefit of the client. Okay, this was a long video, so we're gonna wrap it up very quickly. Hit the like button, show your support. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave those in the comments down below. And don't forget to check out the description. And for those that are still watching, thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.